Hello, everyone. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and we're recording this call for transparency and educational purposes. And this is our empathy visioning circle for talking about the 1964 Canoas Road, formerly St. Mary's Seminary, visioning for how to develop the property there. We're holding these empathy circles with the Santa Barbara community just to talk about people's concerns, ideas about the property. And so we wanted to get started. There's Jason. We have one other person joining us.
There's Jason.
Yeah. So let's see, is connecting audio. And so maybe we just get started with participant introduction. So each person introduce yourself, where your name, your location, and why you're interested in these visioning circles. And I'll just model it. Edwin Rutsch, I'm Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area near Berkeley. And my brother Charles just purchased this property and asked me to help develop it. So that's my interest. Charles, you want to introduce yourself?
I live in Carmichael, California, which is next to Sacramento, with my wife and 4 children. I purchased the property online on an auction, and my goal with my brother is to create a retreat center.
Okay, and Joan?
Hi, I'm Joan, and I'm Edwin's partner, and we live in El Cerrito, California. And my interest, I've been kind of a groupie for education and retreat centers for many years. I've been an educator in hospitals, infection control, and in public health, and in schools, 7th through 12th grade. And as far as retreat centers, I spent about 6 months at Esalen, and then I also went to week-long and weekend workshops there. And we went to Omega in New York, and we spent some time at Mount Madonna. And so I feel like, since this is a purchase that is going to be focusing on making it a really good retreat center, I'm excited about contributing a little bit of ideas.
Okay, thanks, Joan. Nicole?
Hi, I'm a Santa Barbara native. Grew up in a house on APS, and my mom still lives in town, down on Padero. My husband Kevin and I have kind of the next ridge to the east. I have a background in education. I'm a professor of philosophy at Columbia, and like Joan, have spent time at various retreat centers at Esalen, a place called the Sanctuary in Thailand, and some ashrams here in New York also, and I think that's about it.
Great, thanks. Thanks for joining us. Kevin?
Haven't done really retreats that Nicole has, and we're your neighbors, so we want to make sure that we're successful in the neighborhood.
Great, thanks. Jason? You there? Great, thanks. Jason?
Hi, Jason. Hello. Hold on. You see? Yeah. I just switched my audio. I'm Jason Jewell. I'm in Santa Barbara. I'm interested in retreat centers. I've been to retreats, and it's a discussion. I think we're all interested in retreat centers, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thanks. So the core of the retreat center that we're looking at is to build a more empathic society, which is basically for people to listen to each other. So we want to model that with these empathy circles. And I just find that these circles, this process is one of the best processes I know for developing listening skills and for everyone to be able to listen to each other, hear each other, and to speak freely. So feel free to say anything, ask any questions, like nothing's off the table, just say whatever you want, to express anything that you want. Our topic is, what is your vision for developing a retreat center at 1964 Las Canoas Road in Santa Barbara, or whatever is on your mind. So feel free to, say whatever you want. We're going to be having 4-minute turns, and I'm going to be doing the timekeeping. And the process is, there's one person that's the speaker. They select who they're going to speak to. You say an idea or two, and then you pause and you let the listener reflect back their understanding of what you said. You check, did they understand what I'm saying? If they did, you continue with what you're saying. If they didn't quite get it, you can say it again in other words. I'll kind of hold up a little sign when the time is up. And then you just want to wrap up what you were saying, and then it becomes the listener's turn to select their they become the speaker, they select who they're going to speak to. We just go around for the time allotted. Maybe we'll go for about a little bit over an hour, hour and a half, and then we'll just open it up to general discussion without using reflective listening or active listening. So to model that, let's see, do you have a timer, Charles? Perhaps you could keep the time. You up for that? So 4-minute turns, and just kind of wave it. So I'll be the first listener. If anybody wants to speak, I'll just sort of model the reflection. So who would like to be the first speaker? And I'll be your listener.
Okay, I will.
Okay. Jumping right in.
Actually, this was bad. I took notes beforehand because I'm not used to looking at anything. I like to be spontaneous, but now I feel like I better. So I started out by saying my major focus is the physical facility, and to change the ambience from a more, I don't mean this in a really negative way, but it might sound that way, more of an institutional look that it has now, to more of a feeling about nature, artistic, spiritual. And so that is kind of where I've been spending a lot of thought about that. I feel like that's the first challenge.
Okay, so I'm hearing is that you find that the first challenge really to move the ambiance from more of a institutional to more of a nature spiritual quality, and that usually you have your notes at hand and you don't have them quite there at hand right now.
Now I have to look at them because it also keeps it it keeps it more concise. And I feel like, what does that do? I mean, it helps the participants to feel more relaxed, more comfortable, really take in. Part of the retreat center, I found personally, is the ambience, and being able to just leave the world behind and have this much more comfortable, relaxed feeling, and get in touch with yourself and others.
So you're really looking at the ambiance, so just so people can feel relaxed, comfortable, have a comfortable, relaxed, attached sort of ambiance where they can regenerate maybe.
And I think it also helps you to, when you do that, it helps you to really generate new ideas and explore new concepts, is what I find one of the most enjoyable things, besides the interactions that you have with others.
So when you have this kind of a comfortable ambiance, it helps you be more creative and make connections with people.
Very good. And now, if I have time, I have some suggestions. And I'll start with that. And those, I really want to look at my notes. So one thing about changing the ambience to more of a focus on nature, I looked online, and some of you that live in Santa Barbara might know this individual. I found a great website, Billy Goodnick. He is a horticultural architect, in Santa Barbara, and he has an amazing bio. And he was hired by the city for like 20 years to what you see in Santa Barbara. A lot of it, they say, is a result of what he did there. So I feel like he would be a great resource to reach out to. And I'll stop there, and if I have time, I'll continue.
Well, you found a resource, a person that's done sort of landscaping design type work, that's done a lot of work in Santa Barbara. You thought he would be a good person to reach out to.
Right. And some of my ideas, and Edwin and I, well, both of us talked about these, is to have an abundance of drought resistant flowers, trellises in front of the building, and green sculpture. Like here in San Francisco, if any of you have seen the Living Wall, well, I don't know if we could quite do something like that at San Francisco MoMA, but it was really impressive what they, did with.
Well, that was the time too, so I'll just
That's
reflect
fine.
back.
Okay.
So there's a natural wall that you've seen at MoMA, and so it's just making it more of a natural environment, bringing in more plants and so forth is one idea that you have.
I'll say more later. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure you will. I'll speak to Nicole then, if I may. Yeah, and you're muted. Yeah, so I'm really glad that you're all here. We've been holding these empathy circles with community members, and so far everybody's been very enthusiastic about sort of a productive use of the space, because hasn't been really used for quite some time.
So I hear you saying that you're pleased at how the empathy circles have been going, and that you're looking forward to making a space productive that has been somewhat abandoned for a few years.
Yeah, my ears really perked up too when you talked about being a philosophy teacher. So I was really curious about what kind of philosophy you teach, and so I just wanted to put that out there, kind of curious about that.
Do you want me to answer the question,
No,
or do I just
reflect
stay
back?
back?
You just reflect back
okay.
until, yeah.
Okay. I guess you're interested that I'm a philosophy professor.
Yeah, and I'm really looking at it's kind of the core of the work that I've been doing for about 15 years is how do we foster more empathy in society, and sort of the relationship, creating a philosophy of empathy that, placing empathy as a primary social value. And you need to build sort of a philosophy around that to bring it into the society more. So, yeah.
So you're interested in bringing more empathy into the world and grounding that in a kind of a philosophical framework.
Yeah, and see what else. Yes, I feel heard. That's all I have to say. So it's your turn to select the listener.
Okay, I guess I'll just keep going around and have Charles be my listener.
Okay.
I don't have much to say. I think I have some questions and some curiosities, and so I don't know how that will fit into the kind of empathy circle model, but I guess I'll learn.
Okay, so you don't have too much to say, but you do have questions that you'd like to talk about.
I think as a Santa Barbara native, I'm very attached to this area. Some of my best friends live up on Las Canoas, and of course we live there. And so I'm interested in being involved and hearing what your kind of process of arriving at this property, how you came to it, how you found it, where else you have done work with creating retreat centers, and how those have gone and what those look like.
Okay, so you're wondering about the process, how I came to purchase it, and what my experience has been with retreat centers and my goals might be.
I think that's really about all I have to say. Thank you for listening, Charles.
I'll talk to Jason since you haven't participated yet.
Okay.
So a friend of mine told me the place was going to be up for auction. He's kind of into real estate. I have some property I'm developing in Crescent City, California, but other than that, I'm not too much into real estate. Okay, you want to reflect back?
Sure. Your real estate friend told you about the Santa Barbara property, and you have somewhat limited experience in real estate, but you have some Crescent City property that you're developing.
Yeah. So it was, the bidding was going to start at about 2.9 million on a website called 10X. I thought that was a very good price for it. I guess I was thinking it was kind of nostalgic. I have fond memories of youth camps in my youth.
You were attracted to the price as well as the nostalgic nature of the property itself.
So I bid a few times, and as the price went up, I stopped bidding. But then they said, next bid meets reserve, which was about 7.5 million. So I thought, okay, I'll bid one more time. And nobody bid higher, so I won the auction.
Nice. You had an exciting bidding process that ended up at 7.5 million. Congratulations.
So I don't have any experience in running retreat centers. So I've asked my brother to help. I've been very encouraged by the fact that all the neighbors very much like the idea for a retreat center.
Okay, you have limited experience in retreats, but your brother has been brought along to help and guide you in this process, and you're encouraged by the supportive community.
Yes, one person that's involved that I really appreciate is Kent Ferguson. He started the middle school there in Santa Barbara, and he's really done a lot to encourage us in that, get the ball rolling.
Nice. The middle school founder, Kent Ferguson, has been particularly a standout for you in helping you through this initial process of discovery.
The previous owner had renovated part of it, the faculty part and the sisters' residence, but the dormitory still needs renovation. It's been partially demolished, so it needs to be totally renovated.
Some of the property has been worked on and some of it needs more work.
The architect who did the previous work is just about to present a proposal she's been working on for her scope of work, and then we'll get that bid and get all the permits and then begin construction on that.
Okay, the existing architect is preparing a scope of work and bid that you will consider executing on.
Okay, and that's my time, so it's your turn, Jason. Choose who you want to talk to.
Thanks for sharing. Kevin is left. Hi, Kevin. He's on mute.
Good morning to the best. I'm probably not going to be able to participate, but I'm a good listener.
Oh, I'm not hearing you well there.
I can explain.
Yeah, thanks.
He's waiting to be picked up at LAX, and so he might actually not be the best listener for the next 5 minutes until he gets on board. We're trying to juggle some major travel and logistics here at the moment. So Jason, if you want me to be your listener, I'd be happy to do that. Or hopefully we can bring Kevin in a little bit when he's a little more settled. Sorry.
Sure. Are we going to keep going around in a circle, Ed, when you describe
Yeah,
that?
we go through several rounds. Yeah, we'll go maybe for a little bit over an hour, hour and a half.
Thanks for offering, Nicole. I'll just go back to Joan since she started. I'll just go back to Joan. So I'll try to keep this concise, but so Joan, I think you articulated a really important focus for the property in thinking about visioning how the property should feel and present itself to people who experience the property.
Okay, so you think that what I articulated about the property and how it should feel is a very important aspect.
Yeah, I think you have to get that right, no matter how you want to use the property. But I would back up a little bit from there. I tend to think of the end, keep the end in mind, and I kind of, so depends on if you come from the bottom up or the top down, but I'm more start from the top. So I think about, asking the question, how is this property going to be used? What type of experiences or type of people you're going to attract? I think that's a question that's important.
Okay, so your thought is that you like to go from the top up rather than the bottom up. And when you think about it that way, what is most important is exactly how is this going to be used? What kinds of, I gather what you mean, like topics and individuals would be coming to the retreat center.
Right. So then that will inform how you're going to design and present the facility, although you presented your vision. I think that from there, the second thing I think about is coming up with a business model that will last. So when I think about creating something amazing and beautiful, I think of layers, and you have to have a layer that protects the beauty of the property, so that the business model will sustain itself.
Okay, so your other thought is number 2 is, okay, this is a business. And so the beauty is important, but you need to find a model that will work to support both the business and the beauty of the facility.
Right. So I think I'll keep it at that, just kind of taking your thought of how should this property look and feel, and combine that with what type of sustainable business model will stand the test of time so that this beautiful experience can be enjoyed for a long time. And think about what type of people or customer you expect to have, because obviously there's a huge variety even within retreats. There are people who don't do retreats, but even with retreats, there's a huge variety.
Okay, might need a little clarification on the last sentence, but let me see if I got you. So a lot of it depends on who's going to be coming there and what their interests are. But you're saying some individuals don't gravitate to a retreat kind of environment. And so I gather you're thinking you might have other individuals coming that wouldn't normally be going to this facility as a retreat. Is that right? No.
I was just summarizing the three.
Okay.
How the property will look, who the participants will be, and coming up.
Time.
Okay. So you were just summarizing how the property would look, who the participants would be, and lastly, the business part of it. Okay. Sorry for that confusion on that one. Okay.
My fault. No problem.
I guess if we're going around, I'll talk to you again, Edwin.
But you can mix it up. You don't have to select the same people, but
Okay. All right, I'll stick with you for right
okay, I'm listening.
now. So I think what Jason said, I definitely haven't gotten to that part on my notes yet. I feel like I want to talk about the type of retreats, but right now that was my thought. And I guess it was an interesting idea that Jason put out, that I'm going from the bottom up. But I guess that's how I'm feeling, because right now it's the construction time. It's time to think about how the rooms are going to be used and what it feels like. So I felt like, and rather than having a major expense of trying to make the building look like something different on the outside, I was thinking of a lot of, I think that wouldn't be that expensive, but give it a different feeling than it has right now, like a school or when I said institution, I don't mean it in a negative way. Yeah.
Mhm. So you're looking at sort of a bottom-up approach. Just what could be done to change the ambiance of the space to sort of, you're saying it's institutional now, and you're not wanting to denigrate that, but just looking at how to improve the looks.
And I guess I feel like whatever we have there, and I'd like to talk about that later, people appreciate, most people do, but that might be seeking out education, nature and art and spirituality. So my second thought was for, besides the garden, I wasn't finished with that, sorry. Food, that we will be serving there, and gardening. I felt like starting an organic garden. And of course, I'm in Alice Waters' territory up here in Berkeley, and she's done amazing things with the schools. And of course, Michelle Obama had the school children coming and working in the garden. And I thought, I think it would be good all the way around. Perhaps we could get children involved, or even adults that are interested in gardening, and extend that into cooking classes. And I'll stop there.
So you're just thinking of ideas there, sort of a bottom-up approach. You really like the food, organic gardening, organic cooking. You're referencing the Chez Panisse owner and Michelle Obama about doing gardens. So really looking at like setting up some organic gardens.
And also being able to start out by having some of the community involved with that would be interested in it. I thought that would be good. I'm going to mention something that you mentioned now with the gardening part. Edwin's idea, which I loved, for changing the way things look on the outside, was terracing the mountain gradually. Obviously, this is a big deal, but making it look like an Italian, at least that's what I picture, village or something, with terracing and being able to grow vegetables or grapes or foliage down the mountain. And I really like that idea.
You really like the idea about maybe doing some terracing and having some gardens in there, have sort of a bit of like an Italian feel to it.
Right.
So you're kind of some excitement about that idea.
Yeah, the whole outside sounded fun, and I thought it would add something. Now I'm going to move into the art.
That was the time, I think, Charles. You gotta say it
sorry.
right. You said time. It goes fast.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll speak to Jason.
Okay.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone asking questions, because then it gives me something to sort of address. And I think Nicole is asking what the process is for developing the property. So I was going to maybe address that.
Okay. You appreciate questions and you are going to address some of the development questions that people have.
Yes, so you can sort of see this was sort of a spur of the moment, kind of this is not like this long, a lot of people have thought about that property for years. Charles sort of picked it up on a more of a spur of the moment, not quite spur of the moment, but it wasn't like a long process. So we're here, so that's kind of, I think, the context.
Okay, so you have somewhat stumbled onto this, or spur of the moment, to use your word. This is not something you've given a lot of thought to.
But it fits within the context of the Empathy Center that, I founded and been working on that for about 15 years. So, our website's the largest resource for empathy material. So we're bringing that to the whole process of developing the space.
Yes, you feel the empathy circle would be a great fit or use case for this property.
And the first part is doing what we're doing right now in terms of the process is to bring community together. So it's like having a space for everyone to be able to listen to each other, to express freely their ideas, have these visioning circles to see what emerges. Just let things sort of bubble up and ideas and to emerge and to include everyone in the process.
Yep. The empathy circle has already started in the context of the property, and you're using it right now to bring the community into the fold and as part of the discovery process.
Discovery is a good term for it, yeah, because it's sort of, if you have an idea for a project you'd like to host here, bring it up in the empathy circle. You can generate ideas and sort of run with it. If there's a workshop, or Joan's, liking the idea of gardening, bring your gardening tools, start, setting up a space there. So it is sort of an emergent process.
Yeah, it's a great process for discovery.
Yeah, and a lot of people have shared all kinds of ideas for workshops, and we have been talking. We've had a meeting with Kent Ferguson just before this. We meet on a regular basis. He's been, sharing ideas, and so it is sort of an emergent process. There's a lot of physical things to be done with the property just to start getting it into shape. We're working on that part, as well as these visioning circles, is developing the clear vision and kind of potential projects, workshops that could be held.
Sure. Kent has been a particularly good resource to you, and you continue to get good ideas from the empathy circle.
And, there is a question of the look and feel of the space, because it has a little bit of a motel feel. When I think of just driving up, into it, feels a bit like a motel, drive up motel. So what can we do to, create a better aesthetics? In terms of background with retreat centers, I lived a year at Esalen, so I have the background. That's sort of my main background. And with retreat centers, and one of the first people we had in a discussion was David Price, who's the son of the founder of Esalen. So he's a friend of ours. So he kind of gave us tips and things like that, and is a resource too. So kind of Esalen is kind of one of the, he'd also been director there for about 10 years. Okay.
So David Price at Esalen, where you worked, is also another good resource that you found particularly helpful. You also acknowledge the challenge of the motel feel of the place, relative to what, the question of what can you do with it to soften it and create a different vibe.
Yeah, feel heard. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for sharing. Let's circle to Nicole. So I will jump in with some of my thoughts and comments in the context of what I've just heard. So I think a property like this, and I think you have to ask, does your business model generate, $2 million, $8 million? And, that will somewhat inform you of how much you need to spend, and also what type of people you will attract.
So I hear Jason wondering about the kind of scope of the center in terms of income and expenditures, and also the kind of targeted clientele.
Yeah. And I think then if it's on the lower end, or even if it's the higher end, then you need to ask, is this going to be a nonprofit or a for-profit? And where will
And then
those
the
profit, where funds come from?
questions of profitability and target audiences, which I'm sure are things that have been thought about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure, but that's where my mind goes. And then I think if you're going for the low end, you say you're not going to spend a ton of money. I think of, well, what are some of the ways that you can be creative there? So soft costs are very expensive. So architects are very expensive. So my mind, there are contractors out there that have some design sense that will work with you creatively. And if you can, not spend $100,000 on an architect and your budget is lower, then that's kind of, maybe you have an architect on the side and you spend 10 or 20 grand as a sounding board, or maybe you have something specific that you need to get, really specific. It has to be a good use of their time, but just an idea, and you could generate additional ideas to be creative in trying to lower your cost if that's a route that you're going.
So Jason has some questions about architects and expenditures in those areas, and permitting, and sort of all of the nuts and bolts of the process of reshaping the physical plant.
And I think Ken Ferguson might be a great resource as well, David Price, because obviously Esalen has stood the test of time. And the middle school in Santa Barbara is a great school. And they charge a lot of money. So again, where are you? I think, is Esalen a nonprofit? I'm not really sure. So those are two different options and what I was just talking about, but both success stories.
Yeah, the resources of the people connected to Esalen and Ken Ferguson at Santa Barbara Middle School, but that those are both relatively pricey places.
Yeah.
And so is that the model that is being looked at here.
Yeah. And so that's the higher level stuff. And, I haven't even touched on any ideas. I think, Joan, certainly I've thought about the property, and I definitely think a garden would be wonderful. I can see a little quarter-acre, micro farm, and be beautiful. You said your connection to nature. I love that, because the property is in nature, and getting people to put their hands in dirt, just gets them more connected to nature, and then sit down in the dining hall and eat the food that they've grown. I think that's a holistic experience, a beautiful experience, and you can generate so many more ideas like that. But that is definitely one that is exciting to me.
Time.
So if you just give a final reflection, then.
Oh, okay. The idea of gardening as a piece of a retreat center is very appealing, and I guess I can editorialize, maybe say I second that.
Thanks.
So select your listener, Nicole.
Let's see. I guess Edwin, do you want to be my listener?
Yeah, listening.
I was almost having trouble staying focused on being a listener with Jason, because I was in agreement with so many of his questions. So it was wonderful, but frankly a little bit distracting, because I just kept wanting to say yes.
Yeah, you're finding yourself distracted because you had so much agreement with what Jason said. So instead of reflecting, you just wanted to say yes to what he was saying.
And I guess I'll just kind of echo some of those questions about is kind of the model for Las Canoas to be like Esalen, to be a smaller Esalen. What are the kinds of people that are going to be targeted as potential retreaters?
So you're wondering if Canoas will be like a mini Esalen and who the audience will be?
Although, of course, Esalen, you know, in the last few years has had some funding from I think it was a big VC group that bought out a bunch of them, and so that has changed the clientele. Although I'm not sure it's changed the feel all that much, having been there somewhat recently.
So Esalen has changed, perhaps changed a bit because of the funding. Some VC have put money into it.
I guess I also just am curious about the restrictions from the city and the county of Santa Barbara about occupancy, about traffic, about square footage, and architectural board of review. And so I have a lot of curiosity there.
So you have a lot of curiosity about the city planning, sounds like the conditional use permit and everything around that.
And then I just have to apologize because I only blocked out an hour for this. So once we get to 2 o'clock, I'm going to have to step out.
Okay, so you only have an hour and have to drop out in about 12 minutes. Feel heard, or is there more?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Thank
yeah,
you, Edwin.
So I'll speak to Charles.
Okay.
Yeah, so address the profit, nonprofit. So currently the property is owned by Charles's LLC, and that's the owner of the property.
Okay, so currently the property is owned by the LLC.
And we're looking to set up the Empathy Center as a nonprofit. So I'm in the process right now of the setting up the nonprofit. I have a bunch of resources here, you know, for how to set up the nonprofit. Kind of working my head around it, even though my center has been, you know, going on 15 years. It hasn't been a nonprofit. So we want to scale that up to a nonprofit, and that would be the organization that runs it. And Esalen is a nonprofit too. Yeah.
So you're starting a nonprofit that would operate the center. You've been operating as kind of an association for the past 13 years, and you're going to get nonprofit status.
And the idea is that the core of the center is about fostering a culture of empathy. So it's raising the level of empathy. We've done all kinds of work, conflict mediation, all kinds of training. There's videos of us mediating between the political left and right, and in, you know, really intense political, you know, rallies like here in Berkeley and LA, where people are beating each other up, and we go and we have this empathy tent and offer listening to both sides and offer mediation. So we're sort of building on that foundation.
So the core of your work is building a culture of empathy, and that's what you've been doing for quite a while now. And you've been at protests with your empathy tent, kind of bridging, having both sides talk to each other and bridging the divides.
And it's the same thing with families, you know, bringing families together to listen to each other, you know, neighbors, school boards, you name it, you know, I really think that mutual listening, which is what empathy is just a deep form of listening, is really what bridges divides, brings people together, creates understanding, connection, and sort of the foundation for any kind of innovation and creativity. So that's sort of the basic mission philosophy.
So this mission and philosophy is good for families, school boards, cities and communities, and
candidates, political candidates, get them to talk to each other. I ran for Congress. The first thing I did was have brought the candidates together to have an empathy circle, you know, so it's really to spread this throughout the culture, to raise this level of empathy. So that's kind of at the core, and on that, you know, any kind of workshops, whatever can be added on any topic. So
you ran for Congress, and you got the candidates together, and kind of mutual listening is what you're trying to promote.
And all this conditional use permit, there's a lot of, details we're trying to figure out still. I think it's still based on the original 1965 conditional use permit from the city. And, we're still studying that, trying to get a handle on, what that sort of allows and so forth. So, yeah.
So we're still getting a handle on the conditional use permit from the 60s and seeing what that allows as far as renovations and uses.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay, I'll speak to Joan. So Joan, I like your idea about making the property more aesthetically pleasing, with plants and other ideas. And thank you for that recommendation, that person you mentioned from Santa Barbara.
Okay, good. So you're thanking me for the ideas about the plants and the aesthetics outside, and it sounds like you might be interested in looking at that individual.
So I think doing some kind of gardening and work there would be a good idea.
And you also like the idea of gardening, and it sounds like having some community involvement there. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I know there are some trails around the property, but they've been overgrown in the past 5 years or so.
And there are trails there. Rattlesnake Canyon, I think it's called. And
Right, and just around the property itself.
right, so you're thinking that needs some work. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, it's your turn.
I do want to say one thing that's not going to be repeated because Nicole is leaving. And I don't know if this is allowed, but I was afraid she'd go and I wouldn't be able to ask her. My brother is a philosopher, and Glenn Mazes, and his mentor for all these years is Ed Casey in Santa Barbara. And I thought maybe you had some connection with either one of them, but I was going to mention you. Yeah. Are we allowed to say something?
Yeah, we can open it up now since Nicole's leaving. We'll just we have 5 minutes just for any open discussion.
Okay. He's an existential philosopher, and he's actually retired now, and he's trying to enjoy that, but he keeps his hand in it. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I don't know either of those names. My work is in early modern England and France. So Thomas More and Michel de Montaigne, and I did all of my teaching at Columbia and all of my my own academic work was also at Columbia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he graduated from Yale, but it was a long time ago. He's he's an emeritus now, so you're in a different generation, I guess.
yeah, and I work on people from many generations ago. So
okay, yeah, because what is the school that is in Santa Barbara? I know that Glenn said he had presented there, and that's
Pacifica
kind of the Mecca.
Oh, the Pacifica Graduate Institute. Yeah, they do mostly psychology, but they have a program in mythology also, and some interesting work that they do there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm so sorry I got off the topic. But I want to go back to a couple of other ideas that I wanted to mention. And then I also want to address what Jason had to say earlier, but I'll finish with the aesthetic part. And I know.
So
we're-
we're just opening it for general
Oh,
discussion, no
okay.
more reflection. It's,
Okay, but since
everybody can jump in.
Charles chose me, so I'll say something.
Okay. Yep, go for it.
Okay, the other part was the art part outside. So I was thinking about, these are just ideas to throw out. What could you do with the building without, shifting it or changing it? I remember somebody in one of the groups was talking about painting, which I felt like, not the brick. But if you had a mural or a couple of big murals outside that were interesting, and it just so happens that I know a really, he's a very famous muralist here in Berkeley, and he's well connected, John Worley. He's done them all over, and that are very prominent in San Francisco and all over the United States. I thought that would be quite interesting with the plants and the garden, and then art, and then public art, like having sculpture, and you could even have the plants in sculpture form. So putting all that around the building. And then lastly, for spiritual, and I know, Charles, you might not like this idea, though, is water is so important, I think, for spirituality. And a pool, sauna, or even like, just having water around, that's what makes Esalen so special. And a lot of the retreat centers, not all of them have water. I don't remember that Omega did, but it has a whole different look to it. And it's been building for years and years. So, we're not in the same, in the same category.
Can I just pause you for a minute? Nicole, if you're needing to leave, maybe just any sort of final comments before you go, like how was the circle? Any final thoughts? Just
This was an interesting modality, and thank you for allowing us to join. I think it's something I would probably take into my own classroom in the future. I'm sorry that I have to go, but it was lovely to get to meet all of you. And please keep us informed and in the digital virtual circle of emails as the project continues to move forward. Thank you all.
And
so
you're
much.
welcome to join more of these. They're open to, so any others if you like to take part. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And
thank you all.
Nice meeting you.
okay, so yeah, anybody jump in? We can just chat a little bit here.
It's Jason's turn. I took off quite a bit there, but I want to get back to your people who you're thinking about. Yeah.
And you're muted, Jason.
Sorry. Jill, and I loved your idea about the art mural. I think that's great. I also personally would paint the building, but I was mentioning to Charles and Edwin at the property that I would look for ways to break up, because it's just a lot of volume of wall. So my idea, your idea is better, Joan, but I think both are good. So I was just saying to change some materials, like Core 10 steel is a steel that is very rustic and organic. And I think the coloration is great. Texture is great. And I think you can use that, simply a sheet of it, and you just apply it to the wall. You can always remove it later. I think it'd be fast and relatively cheap. I mean, steel is not that cheap, but commodity prices have come down. I think that could be one way, but I think your mural also is fantastic. I also was thinking some of the bricks that kind of jut out, you could put a little wood box beam. I mean, just wood versus brick is just so much brick. I think those are pretty relatively cheap, easy. There's no real construction. I don't even know if you need permits for things like this. You just attach your mural to the brick and you make a beautiful painting. And how fun would that be to vision a great painting that would give the feeling of nature and the empathy and compassion and community and connection. And I mean, to come up with a mural would be so fun and do so much for the property. And, you know, maybe just between those two brick outcroppings that, you know, it's like probably a 30-foot run or 40-foot run, put the mural right in there, or possibly on the church. I don't know. The church is a huge wall. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Good.
Yeah.
I like wood. I mean, I think inside that, we were talking about that yesterday, and we were looking at, somebody sent, I don't know if you looked at it, Charles, a clip from Italy, from a retreat center. And as far as simple furniture that's wood, it just has a warmth about it. I guess outside, if you don't want to have a lot of it because of fire, I think one of the big advantages of brick is that so far there's never been a fire problem there, which is good.
But you can do, I mean, and maybe this is a bad idea, but it's amazing they have composite materials that really do look like wood, but they're not, and they're fire, you know, they're completely fire resistant and all that.
Oh,
but
great.
just an idea. Yeah. But you bring up a good point with wood being, you know, fire.
Yeah, I'm so happy that
Being burned on the brick wall. I mean,
probably not. I guess, and Charles brought up the big problem is getting the brush out of the way.
yeah.
You know, just having a clear space around it. Although having water is great too. I'll put in another plug for water.
Swimming pool, that's 3 votes. When we walked around, we were in the, you know, on the plaza there, and the first thing I asked Jason was about a swimming pool. He was like, yay. So we're working on Charles for that.
Well, it's just, again, back, you know, it's not necessarily expensive, and where do you put it? I mean, you know, getting good bids. I also would think about going to LA. I have friends that have built swimming pools in Santa Barbara and spent $400,000, and I have friends that have spent closer to $100,000 and $150,000, and it really depends if you're on grade and whether you need to dig down. It also depends on your contractor, and you know, and this Santa Barbara contractors are, it's like a little club. You know, they all kind of buddy with each other, and so just be mindful of that. If you can find, I actually have a friend who has a beautiful pool in Los Angeles, and newly built, and she got a great deal on it. So you know, you can save 100,000 plus, you know, if you choose wisely, and still get a great pool. In fact, my friend in Santa Barbara that lives next to me spent more money on what I think is an inferior pool. So just price and quality. So I would say that. And then on the pool subject, okay, so I mentioned, Charles and Edwin, that I have several ideas, and I'll just share one right now. There's a possibility, it's something that I would explore with the fire department, okay? Getting the fire department on your side is a great idea. And I also think it's great for the community, right? So you're in the backcountry there, and there is fire risk. I think the property, the cement roof and the brick, you know, I've read through the property reports, and the property itself is very fire resistant, and definitely get the brush back, and that's a fairly easy project. However, around you is fire risk. So, and that's where the fire department and CAL FIRE, that's their domain. That's where they patrol. They would love you if they had access to your pool water, right? They come with a helicopter, and they would scoop the water from the pool up in the event of a fire. They would love you for that. And I think that's a great community resilient message that you could also market and possibly get concessions. So I think of that road coming up the hill from Las Canoas as should be probably an expense sooner than later. Asphalt roads like that, if you let them go and go and go, they get to the point of no return where you have to take it out and start over. Whereas if you maintain them, and that's just like a 10-year, 20-year, 30-year budgeting item, it's possible that the fire department might do a quid pro quo, or you might be able to structure some sort of deal where they could pay for a reslurring, resurfacing of that road. And wouldn't that be an amazing benefit to the property in exchange for, you know, their use of your water in a fire? So I think about that. It's like, it's a win-win. I don't know if they couldn't do something like that, but I always think of partnering. You know, this is a way to get something that would benefit you and your asset, and something that could also benefit the fire department and also look good in the community. So win-win-win. So that's one of my ideas there, and it goes hand in hand with creating a pool.
That's a great thought, and I do like that. It's true that you really have to win over the fire department. I mean, I ran a program in a hospital, and we worked really closely with them, and they have a lot of clout. I was trying to get waterless soap in the hallways way back, and you know, before it was popular. They were afraid we would have fires because it had alcohol in it.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the video is breaking up a little bit.
She's frozen right now.
Yeah, she's speaking, but
Are you in the same house?
we are. She's downstairs, so I don't know what happened.
I hope you're not next.
Oh, I have pretty good connection. I'm directly connected to the router. She's on Wi-Fi.
I see.
Yeah, I don't know if really. I can hear her speaking downstairs. She doesn't realize where she's frozen.
Do you want to go bring her up and have her sit next to you, or
Maybe it'll clear up.
don't want to?
She'll probably come up in a sec.
Oh yeah, she's now off. Why don't we finish her thought?
Oh, yeah, I thought it probably. Internet connection is unstable. That's kind of strange, but oh, there she comes.
Coming back.
So you broke up there, Joan, and
I left. I don't know why I have an extender on, but my Wi-Fi just completely went. I don't know why. Yeah.
weird. So we didn't hear what you were saying. I did hear you.
We're
in
at
the-
the hand soap. That's where we last.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying it was a fantastic idea because we won them over, and it was so helpful, you know, to have them as friends. So I love that idea.
Yeah, it's just worth exploring, you know. It would put it on my list. I have some friends in the fire department, and one really good friend who just retired last year. He was an engineer at the station right here, station 15 right next to me, which might be the serviceable station for your property. Yeah.
The other issue you brought up was sort of the clientele. You know, what is the market like? We're still.
Oh, right. I wanted
So-
to talk about that too.
okay.
Yeah.
Any ideas?
Joan, go ahead.
Go ahead. Did you want to talk about it?
I mean, I would even I would even actually, before even going there, I think you have to decide. I mean, ultimately, you know, if it's a nonprofit, you know, how are you going to get your nonprofit dollars? You know, that's a question. We talked about this a little bit, Edwin, on the property, and you know, we're going into recession, and you know, people are, you know, a little bit tighter with their money, and Santa Barbara already has a lot of nonprofits, so nonprofit dollars in Santa Barbara, you know, is competitive, you know. And thirdly, I'm on a nonprofit board, so I have been since 2009, so I have some perspective. The missions over time shift. So, you know, might be homeless for 5 years, you know, then it's the arts, and it's children and education. So the areas that are best supported do shift over, you know, a 5-year period. which means within the context of raising money, you might be in one period a little bit easier or a little bit more difficult, depending what category you're in, and that's just a reality. So within that, I have been, this is mostly for Joan, because I think I've shared most of this with Charles and Edwin. I went to, my big retreat experience was the Hoffman Institute in Napa Valley. And they attract wealthy, they've been around, I think, since the 70s, Bob Hoffman, and they, so they have a long-term track record like Esalen, and they attract a lot of wealthy people. And those alumni give quite a bit of money. They are a nonprofit. So they do, it's a nice model. I think it's inclusive in the sense that, it's $5,200 for a week, I think. And some percentage of those, let's say there's 40 people at a retreat for the week. A couple people, 10%, four out of the 40, can receive full or partial scholarship. And the retreat center can offer that because they're a nonprofit. They raise money. Some of the monies go towards, the facility, and some of them go towards scholarship. So that's a nice thing to be able to do. But it's just one model. Yeah, I think about, what is the model?
Right. Well, I think it is kind of soon, but I feel like another possibility with nonprofits, and I don't have the business angle that you have, I don't have the experience with that, is grants.
Yeah.
Edwin's not going to shift with the under everything, whether it's art, spirituality, nature, and I was thinking, like, we can offer practical things to start with, like for continuing education courses on day longs, like to start with, when you have a facility and you have, educators that want to do that, because nurses, psychologists, teachers, or even physicians, they all need continuing education units. I still have to do that, and I appreciate it. So I felt like empathy is going to be the underlying principle, no matter what we're doing at the retreat, just like Esalen or Omega or any of the retreats. There is the underlying concept of humanity and coming together. And so we can have CEU courses on that could be offered to the different professions. And I feel like you have to kind of scale up. It's going to take time, but that's something that could be done fairly easily when things are more established, without having all the wonderful things that I'm sure Charles and Edwin are going to be doing.
That's a really good point, and I agree with it. Although I don't know about fairly easily. I think it's doable, but I think it's a lot of work. And I think
Everything.
it's longer than you think, right? So you nailed it, and Edwin, that's so true. These types of services, your empathy, and creating those bridges and connections are, more important than they ever have. They're always important, but in this world that we're living in today, they're so important. And I think a lot of people would see value in them, whether it's teachers or professionals or what, you name it. But, getting in there and, I was on the PTO of a public school in Santa Barbara, and a big thing in the last 5 or 10 years or so is mindfulness and social emotional behavior, and giving kids the tools that we didn't have when we were little. And so, but I was in the process of these school. They're very. If a school versus say a company, Microsoft, whatever, it's a different. You need to know someone, and it's very bureaucratic. It's slow. they need to, it takes a long time if you're going to go to a school for teachers, although teachers certainly need it, for them to figure, is this something that we want? What kind of curriculum, who are we going to use? That takes a really long time, probably much faster if you go to a company, but still you're going to have that process, and you're going to need to know someone. And once you go there, and if you imagine if you got Microsoft or something like that, then it would probably, scaling would probably be a lot faster. And maybe you already have that, Edwin, I have no idea. But there is a huge, I believe there's a huge opportunity there. I think the next exercise is to say, and this is a challenge and an open question, and I don't have an answer, but why this property? It's a world-class property. The building, you're right, is institutional if you change the face of it, but where it is in nature, in the view, is world-class. You find something, you can go all over the world and be challenged to find something. Apples, and how do you compare something that's amazing is just amazing? That's what this property is. So I think of Davos, or these big summit meetings, Camp David, you could invite people here to the property, but there needs to be, in other words, you can do an empathy circle, you can rent a space downtown Santa Barbara for a couple $1,000s a month, right? And you're doing, your work is your work, and I'm sure it's amazing and good work. Mm-hmm. My point is, why at this property? And so you need to it's an expensive property, and you need to be able to price something to factor in that expense versus just meeting in a conference room downtown. I don't know if you get my point.
Yeah, you can do kind of workshops, just rent the place. So you don't have all the overhead. So how to really use this property, because it's a big expense, and you got to be able to cover all those expenses. I would add, in terms of the topic, I had been in publishing previously. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it is the trends, like you're talking about with nonprofits. There's different topics. Could it be homeless, or mindfulness was a big trend for a while. So these trends kind of go through the culture, and I think we're kind of like set with empathy as the trend. This is like, maybe the culture will come around to this, eventually, and we've had Barack Obama who's talked about it. You mentioned Microsoft. The founder of Microsoft has talked extensively about the importance of empathy, for their creativity and design, through human-centered design. It's like a core design, value is the first step. So those are just some, that I just want to throw into the mix too.
Is if you if you can position yourself as something that's not a trend, that's something that's needed all the time. And I was specifically mentioning the trends within nonprofits, but it's the same thing in the corporate world too. I mean, there are things that get stressed or de-stressed over time. The other thing to think about is that, you come to, like, if you go to Hoffman, there's no real gurus, right? Bob Hoffman is, it's named after Hoffman. So, you'd think maybe he's a guru, but, and you can buy his book and whatnot, but really, there's counselors there, and it's really just a solemn place, like a monastery, to go deep inside and do a lot of work and do the work, right? So you're not going there to connect with a guru per se. And some retreats are about that. It's about branding a guru, and that's not necessarily bad. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that sometimes you go to a retreat and it really is centered around a guru, and sometimes you go to a retreat and it's just centered around the work. And I think that's something to differentiate, and not that one is good.
It's definitely not a guru thing. We've been to Mount Madonna, which is, at least way back then, it was sort of a guru thing, but this is very much about the empathy work and kind of an open platform for different practices.
Of all of this, Edwin, but what I'm encouraging you is to, put that into the vibration, into the marketing materials, into the business plan, so that, you probably have that in your head, but whoever's going to the property, it should be very clear to them before they go, in testimonials on your website, and so that, when I know nothing about your empathy circle, like the philosopher lady, she didn't seem to know too much about, the property and you and everything. So she's brand new, right? So someone like that is like, what am I getting into? What is the empathy circle? What is that experience like? What's that work like? What are the objectives? Why is this good for us? Why do I need to go to Santa Barbara? Can't I just do an online course? Oh, okay, no, I'm going to go to Santa Barbara because this property is bringing this whole experience. And I'm like, yeah, I need to have that experience. That's indispensable to be there, to check out, to press pause on time, to just focus and connect on doing deep work so that I can, if I'm a team, let's say I'm a design team at Apple. All right, so the 20 of us are going to go there, and we all have different personality types. So we need to really build some empathy so we can work better together, right? And we're going to do it in this amazing space so that we can garden together, we can go hiking together, we can not just do Edwin's work, but we can go swimming and watch sunsets and, sit by the campfire, listen to music, and all of that probably helps. What I'm saying is 1 + 1 = 3. It helps your empathy circle even be more successful because all of these environmental situations compound on your work to get even a better result. That's what I think somebody who is, whether it's someone at Microsoft is saying, hey, should I take my 20 people to Santa Barbara or not? Or, whoever it might be, an individual saying, hey, I need a week there. Getting that clear as a marketing message, right? Because it's marketing, right? Marketing is a thing. I'm not a big marketing guy, by the way. I'm not. But I do think it's important because that's how people work. Most people, they're like, there's no context. Like, why do I need to go to Santa Barbara? Why do I need this empathy circle? They want those answers, to hit them and say, yes.
Yeah, really lay it out clearly, like what it's about, why the vision, some introductory videos, the website, just to introduce people, like what the overall, and that's what we're sort of developing here. There is sort of that empathy, and we're also doing the process. It's more than the empathy circle is just one of many practices. So it's sort of it's an easy introduction and foundational practice, but there's conflict mediation, personal support, human-centered design. If you're familiar with the design community, you have all those design tools, from IDEO or Stanford Design School that starts with empathy, right? It's like about listening, and then you kind of take it to the next step. So we have a lot of material, for just kind of this online center, but shifting it now to this physical space. And it's a great question. Why the physical space versus just doing online or doing it in, renting a space and holding a workshop? So I think we need to really come up with that. It's maybe a whole lived experience, more embodied experience there.
Everything you just mentioned is fantastic work, and there's a huge market for it and huge demand. And so, the world is your oyster there. I mean, people, so, you go to an Apple design team or whoever you go to, people would love to have this experience. And, I wouldn't be shy in pricing it. Reflect your value. If you have all those years of experience and all these different buckets of knowledge, get that out to the world through scale. Do it online, do all of it. If you have the energy for that, if you have the vision for that, to me, it's something that the world needs. And that needs to be, that's a great place to spend money, really. All those marketing materials, the website, the videos, having that being professionally shot and professionally presented and laid out logically in a way that's captivating to somebody saying, yes, we know we need this. Edwin's our guy, Santa Barbara's our place. That's where we're going to go. And that would be money well spent, So.
Well, I think can be an underpinning, whether you're doing a yoga or dance workshops or art workshops or cooking, or
Gardening.
whatever. I mean, they're all going to, I think, the plan is to have it like a regular retreat center, but empathy can be, under one of the values that is something that is given thought to during any of those, experiences. I did want to say one thing that's off the subject that you brought up that just was interesting to me, because that's my heart and soul with education, is emotional social learning and children from K to 12. I actually wrote a little book about it because I felt like people needed to bring that up to the front, that kids need it, a space for that, and not put any academic credit on it, just pass fail, but a place where they could have a teacher, but be responding with their peers, and that you could find problems before they do something happen.
Hold on here. The heck? Sorry.
So I was fascinated that you brought that up, that your school was talking about it, because I did a lot of research on that.
The whole district. So Santa Barbara Unified School District has taken on social emotional learning for elementary schools. And
Great.
Barbara is a progressive place. So even for the junior high and high school kids, there's a lot of emotional support. Like they're getting older, and if there's some mental issues, there's a lot of there. It's not a stigma here. It's so my daughter had that social emotional stuff she's still in elementary school, but it's great. And there are there's this lady from Maine, Dancing Jaguars, that's the name of her company, and she does these amazing nature-based spiritually guided, it's a spiritual, it's not Christian, it's spiritual. And I say that earlier, Joan. So I think was looking for a place in Santa Barbara, but I don't know, who knows? Again, it's one of those things that you could explore. There's people out there already doing a lot of good work in Santa Barbara. If you're looking to connect to the community, you'll find so many practitioners here. It's almost overwhelming. Medical intuitives. I mean, just there's so many. So it'll be more filtering down what type of work practitioners would you want on the property. But I wanted to make one point related to what I was saying before. I think that if Edwin has all of his work, it's not just empathy circles, it's different buckets of work. And you have these other activities, right? Hiking, biking, whatever, gardening,
Yoga,
cooking, yoga, whatever, right? Meditation, whatever. In my opinion, it's your property. I would make sure there's a nice thread through the whole thing, so it feels very holistic and not just, okay, we did Edwin's work, okay, go play. You know what I mean? I think like, okay, we're going to garden. Why? Like, in the context of Edwin's work, gardening is helpful in these ways, right? And meditation is helpful in these ways, right? So you're really integrating the property and integrating the experience. And I think that's more powerful for someone visiting the property, rather than saying, I mean, you would never say this, but I'm just saying some kind of disintegrated, you have 20 different practitioners and a yoga person comes up and it's like, okay, let's do yoga together for an hour, right? It's a little more disjointed. And maybe that sounds like a detail that doesn't matter, but I think it matters to someone that's going there. I think it's more powerful to say to someone that's going to spend a week there and possibly a decent chunk of money there, to say, we thought about your whole journey here, all 7 days, right? And you're going to have a lot of flexibility to do different things, but whatever you do, we have, we're going to put it in context for you. And it's going to be, not just an activity, but something that you can add more value to through your lens, Edwin.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, what we're looking at, is that it is integrated. How does listening, constructive dialogue relate to yoga or nature? How is it listening to nature? So really creating that whole, I mentioned about the philosophy of empathy. It is putting this listening at the core, and it's already so powerful in the culture. Like all of therapy is pretty much based on listening is effect. Mediation is listening is sort of core, as well as so many other practices and integrating it. So there's maybe kind of work to be done about that integration process. Yeah, I'm totally there. I just wondered, anybody have questions for Charles? You're a little quiet. Just wondering that if anybody has questions for Charles or any comments.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, Charles, do you have comments about what we've been talking about?
Oh, I'm just soaking it in. I guess my position is I don't want to be kind of in the nuts and bolts of it, but kind of from just a higher level, so that it's not like occupying my whole day or my whole
Yeah,
work.
it's an undertaking. Yeah.
Yeah, I realize there'll have to be certain people doing certain departments, and that's kind of their focus. And
Yeah, we spent 3 days moving furniture. You were there. You saw that, Jason. We were hauling furniture, heavy, sofas and
Yeah.
and dressers and everything else, doing all that sorting. So
Boy, there's so much up there. Did you have your yard sale, by the way?
not yet. We need to get a container up there to haul away a lot of the
worst of it.
worst of it. Yeah, and then get rid of a lot of the electronics I think Kristen was starting to sort the take it down through e-waste, and so just going through sorting, as Charles was saying.
And donation, you can have it, people like the Catholic Charity pick it up.
Right.
Yeah, you get it
Well,
right
anyway,
off.
this has been fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we'll bring it to a close then, unless there's
Sure.
something else.
That's good. It's nice to reconnect. It wasn't too long that I've seen you guys, and thanks for the time. Nice to meet. I can't remember her name. Was it Carolyn?
Nicole, was it?
Nicole, yeah.
Mhm.
And her husband, I guess that's her husband. We
Kevin, yeah.
didn't get a chance to connect with him, but it's nice to know that there are people. That's very Santa Barbara, right? This is a unusual and amazing and sometimes confusing community. So Joe and I've lived here for 21 years. So
20 years. Oh,
yeah, since 2001, almost 22.
and it sounds like you enjoy it.
Oh yeah, it's a nice community. I think you're going about it in a great way to reach out to people, because it is an active community. Oh, sorry. Hold on. That's really annoying. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's an activist community. It's an active community. Like people want to engage. They're not
Great.
other communities where they just leave me alone. It's great that you're reaching out, I think. So.
And you're
you
welcome to join more of these discussions every Monday. If you have some friends, from the community, if they're workshop leaders or have ideas for projects, would love to hear any. If you have an idea for a project, just let us know and we can see about if there's a space or, funding or whatever to implement that be it a training or a project or whatever. So I want to hear those ideas too.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Great. All right, guys. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks again for this morning.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. It's a real
Bye-bye.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye. See you,
Bye-bye.
Charles.
Bye.
Let me hit the recording button.
Mhm.
How do I stop there? Stop. Are you sure you want to stop recording?